changing gears a little bit, so let's shift. We talked about the plan, the transition, and again, by all accounts, everything went really well. We'll talk about coverage, retirement plan coverage, and Washington really is one of the states leading the way in terms of covering employees of smaller businesses who may not have a retirement plan.
Right.
So talk a little bit about the legislative process and what's going on in Washington today.
So the legislature did pass, the Washington State Legislature did pass what is called the retirement marketplace. And that likely was a scaled down version of the policy that the prime sponsor of the bill would have liked to have gone forward with. But it was also something that was reached in a compromise between the House and the Senate. And I think has the potential of really helping to resolve some of the issues around, are people really saving for retirement? Do they have the means and the tools and the mechanisms to be able to save for retirement, even if they have the desire to do so? So this process, and I can't speak too much about it because they're in procurement right now, would pre-vet and filter IRA sponsors who would come in. And there are fee limitations that can go into the plan. But this, I think, will open the door and help people be able to do that. Now, unfortunately, it's not a mandated offering for employers yet, and I think that's something the prime sponsor would have liked to have seen in that, is that it would be compulsory for employers to offer it. Right now, it is not. So, employees are going to have to talk to their employer about being able to offer it through payroll deduction. But it is a great first step, and I think once there are some successes there, then the likelihood of getting some of the other policy provisions in would be much higher.
So that's real exciting, and so that's Washington really taking the step, the initiative in terms of building out a program. It's going to be exciting to watch over the next couple months. Yeah. Are there other pieces of legislation? I know we've talked over the course of the last 24 months about auto enrollment and things like that. When you could share any other pieces of
Sure.
legislation out in the public domain?
Sure. So at least for Washington, auto enroll, and I think we were one of the few plan sponsors that did not have auto enroll in our 457 plan, and if not, one of the few anyway. And so we were able to work with legislators who sit on the Select Committee on Pension Policy, which is a quasi-legislative and employer member committee that meets in the interim. And this, the prime sponsor of that bill, this session, we were able to help that senator to get this bill passed. The governor just signed it on Friday. And so what that will do is for all new state employees coming into Washington State, effective January, they will be auto-enrolled into the state's 457 plan at a 3% deferral rate.
Now, did they discuss, one of the things in the private sector is the auto enrollment with the auto escalation that, didn't make it this time around, but is that something that might be considered in the future?
It could. I think the fact that we put a percentage instead of a flat amount will help with some of the escalation. So as compensation increases, the deferral will also increase. But I think auto escalation is something to look at as we see the success of this moving forward. And the bill prior to this actually had local government involved in it. So I think that might be something that could happen over the next 2 to 5 years, is that local government would be looking at this. And actually the bill allows local government to do auto enroll for the 457 plan, but it doesn't mandate them.
Shifting gears, you also oversee a very large defined benefit plan. We don't hear a lot about the state of Washington defined benefit plan. You're active in the National Association of State Retirement Administrators and other organizations. We hear in the press about Illinois, Kentucky, New Jersey, to name a few. Pensions are kind of bubbling up as an issue. Talk a little bit about your plan is extremely well funded and it's well managed. Talk a little bit about the DB plan.
Okay. So we actually have 2 tiers that are open to all new employees coming in. So we have the full DB, which is the Plan 2, and then we have a hybrid plan, which is a 1% DB, and then a defined contribution account where the employee contributions go in to fund the DC side. And in 1977, October of 1977, the old Tier 1 structure was shut down, and Tier 2 was opened. And what Tier 2 does is it increased the retirement age from having 30 years of service and being able to retire. So you had people retiring out of the system at 48, 49, 50 years old. Plan 2 has an age 65 retirement unless you have 30 years of service, and then you have an age 62 retirement. It also extended out the average final compensation period that's used in your formula to determine your benefit. from 2 years to 5 years. And so that happened back in 1977. And I think the promising part of Plan 2 over Plan 1 is that Plan 2 actually has a cost of living adjustment built into the plan design, where Plan 1 does not. And so Plan 1 indexing, I think people are going to run the risk of running out of money if they are retiring at 48, 49, 50 years old. So Plan 2 has some benefits in it. It also has some takeaways if you talk to the membership, comparing Plan 1, Plan 2. I think that getting the plan design right the first time is extremely important, that these are not overly generous benefits. People don't get wealthy from their DB plan in Washington. So making sure that you have an adequate and appropriate plan design. And then second, having the discipline to fund the design that you've created, very important. And I think for the most part, the legislature has done a really good job with that. There was a period of time where there's a little valley of the contributions coming in, and that was unfortunate. But I think memories are long, and I think there were lessons learned from that, and the funding has been at 100% since. And then making sure that you invest the assets timely. And so one of the things we as the administrator do is make sure that the employer contributions are coming in timely so that we can get them into the investment markets. For Washington, roughly 75% of the benefit is actually paid from investment earnings and not contributions. So I think those three things, making sure you have the design done, built appropriately, fund the design that you've created, and then invest the assets appropriately.
But you're also, I think the other takeaway, and we heard this when we were talking about the transition, is about communication. Mm-hmm. And it's communicating with all these parties, with the executive branch, the legislature, to make sure that everyone's kind of aware and understands. It sounds like you guys do a really great job in that.
We certainly try. We have a unique governance structure in Washington, and I think it puts controls in place that may not be in place in other states or localities. Our agency is appointed by the directors appointed by the governor, so we're an executive branch agency. The State Investment Board is managed by a board, and then our actuary is actually a legislative branch agency. So there are many controls in the system, if you will, and I think those multiple voices, I think that's helpful. And we all have single missions, and I think that's helpful as well.
Director Marcie Frost, thank you so much for sharing your successes. And look forward to having you on again on Staying Ahead of the Curve.
Yeah, thank you for having me.